Now I had to go rush and change my shirt because there are some absolute stone cold killers on the waiver wire this week. The trade deadline is November 4th. That is next Tuesday. So the waiver wire is going to be filled with some players that you might not recognize, but we're trying to stash some players before other trades happen. So without further ado, let's get into Week 9's waiver wire. Starting it off with Tyrone Tracy. Unfortunately, as we all saw, Cam Scadaboo is out for the rest of the season with an ankle injury. Now, he's going to be a top 24 rest of season running back for me. He was the starter before Cam Scadaboo came in. He was great last year in his limited usage. He had over 1,000 scrimmage yards. Now, outside of a trade coming into New York, Tyrone Tracy should be the main guy for the rest of the season. Now, that doesn't come up on the waiver wire pretty often. And Bam Knight, he's available in about 80% of leagues. Now, on his day off, Michael Carter was fired. He was released from the team. That means that it's Bam Knight and Amari DeMercado until Trey Benson comes back. They play the Cowboys this week, and their awful defense makes Bam Knight just a slam dunk plug and play for this week and maybe even next week. Tyjae Spears, now he has been highly efficient with his limited touches since he's returned into the lineup, much more than Tony Pollard. And speaking of Tony Pollard, he is one of the players who's been floated around as a running back trade candidate. It's hard to start Tyjae Spears with any sort of confidence unless Tony Pollard is traded or Tyjae Spears just completely takes over the backfield. Kyle Monungai. Now, we were hoping Lamar Jackson would not suit up so the game script would favor the Bears just a little bit more. Unfortunately, the backup quarterback for the Ravens, Tyler Huntley, did beat the Chicago Bears, so the game script did get out of hand. That was the whole thing with Kyle Monungai. You really need the Bears to be up for Kyle Monungai to have a lot of value. Now, I will tell you, Kyle Monungai does face off against the Bengals in Week 9. That is a game script where the Chicago Bears could be up again. And if so, Kyle Monungai will be useful then. But if nothing else, he's a stash for right now. Rashad Smith, another player who's probably going to end up on a lot of waiver wires if he isn't already. He had his worst game as a pro. He fumbled the ball and then never saw the field again. But he's best in PPR leagues. That's where he really excels. He's not your traditional running back. He's under 200 pounds. He's a good pass catcher. Now, there are a lot of games that are coming up where they will need a pass catcher out of the backfield. The Chiefs play the Bills, the Broncos, the Colts, and the Cowboys in the next 4 games. Now, here are the main guys you should be stashing. I'll talk about Tank Bigsby and Dylan Sampson. Their situations are a little unique. They're both stashes because Saquon Barkley and Quinshon Judkins were banged up in Week 8, but they both go into the Week 9 bye. Emmanuel Wilson. Now, he had 15 opportunities compared to Josh Jacobs' 16 opportunities in Week 8. This isn't any sort of takeover, but Jacobs is dealing with an injury still, and they play the Panthers in Week 9, the same Panthers that James Cook just ran 216 yards on. Isaiah Davis. Now, we've heard rumors that Breece Hall could get traded. Isaiah Davis has looked good with his touches, but at the moment, Isaiah Davis is just a stash. Devin Neal. Now, Alvin Kamara did get banged up in this game. He's another player with a lot of trade rumors talking about Alvin Kamara. Now, Devin Neal had some fun college tape, and even if he's bad, if Kamara gets traded or he happens to miss a few games, volume is king in fantasy football. Now on to wide receivers. There are a lot of guys that I actually like here a lot. You can rank them in any order, whatever seems fit for your team. I'm going to start it off with Brandon Ayuk, though. The leading receiver for the 49ers in Week 8 had 45 yards. The 49ers need Brandon Ayuk so bad. They need Ricky Pearsall to come back as well. But what's crazy is the top pass catcher for the 49ers could be on waivers, could be Brandon Ayuk once he returns. Troy Franklin. Now, he went 6 for 89 with 2 touchdowns on top of that. It does help when you play the Dallas Cowboys defense. He's been mentioned on a lot of waiver wire episodes so far because he has had his ups and downs. He's very hard to trust, but he's always a flexible wide receiver in the right matchup. In Week 9, they play the Texans, so that's not ideally the best matchup, but he's a good stash, if nothing else, to see if he actually emerges as the wide receiver 2 for the team, or at least a consistent wide receiver 2 for the team. Trey Tucker, he's been a full-time player alongside Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers when they're healthy. There are a lot of trade rumors that are swirling around Jacoby Myers right now, so it could lead to more targets Trey Tucker's way. And then Kayshon Boutte. Drake May is on an MVP pace right now. He's had 4 touchdowns to Boutte in 3 games. He's always a big play waiting to happen. You would love more volume. But he did still get 20 and 21% of the targets in 2 of these last 3 games. But he's more of a boom-bust flex, but just as Troy Franklin, he could emerge and be better as the season goes on. Christian Watson, he had 4 targets, caught them all for 85 yards in his first game back. Among the wide receivers who ran 20 routes or more in Week 8, Watson's 3.86 yards per route run is 3rd on the week, only behind Tucker Kraft and Jalen Waddle. So Watson should definitely be rostered or at least stashed in a lot of leagues. A few more wide receiver stashes here. Darius Slayton rostered in only 18% of leagues. His first game back in 2 weeks, he ran the 3rd most routes for the Giants behind Windale Robinson and Theo Johnson. And the Giants face some high-scoring opponents in these next few weeks, so they will need Darius Slayton. Chimere DK, he was a first pick in the 4th round of the 2025 draft. He was drafted ahead of Eli Iomanner, and I liked Iomanner more coming into the draft and after. Chimere DK has picked up in these last 2 weeks. He went 4 for 70 and a touchdown, and then just last week, 7 for 93 and played 90% of the snaps. And he had a 21% target share, so that should not be out on waivers. And Jalen Noel, this is strictly more of a stash. He did not play a lot in Nico Collins and Christian Kirk's absence, but he's hyper efficient with the touches he does get, so we're hoping he develops more into a role later on in the season. Let's get into tight ends. You have to start it off with Mr. Aronde Gadsden. Now, he's rostered in 61% of leagues, but if he's out there, again, you must go get him. I said these same exact words last week, and now he's my tight end 8 for the rest of the season. He'll have his ups and downs as all the receiving weapons do, but he's athletically gifted and he's absolutely balling out right now. Colston Loveland. Now, he does play the Bengals' 32nd ranked defense versus the tight ends. He's worked more and more into the offense. If Cole Kmet misses more time with this back injury, Colston Loveland could be plugged into your lineups. He's not a must start, but he's a must stash. Let's not forget he was the 10th overall pick in the NFL draft. Theo Johnson. Now, I talked about him just a little bit with Darius Slayton in the wide receiver section, but Cam Skadaboo was 3rd in targets and receptions since Jackson Dart took over. A lot of those targets will go to Tyrone Tracy, but there are other pass catchers that will benefit from this vacated 12% target share as well. Theo Johnson, since Dart took over, was already at 18% of the targets, and if you compare that to all other tight ends during that span, there's only 6 other tight ends ahead of him. Now, a couple of deeper plays here. Jawan Johnson, he's getting targets again, finally. It certainly helps when the game script goes negative, and against the Rams in Week 9, we could see that. And then Pat Freiermuth, he plays the Colts. The Colts are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. Again, this is only in super deep leagues, or maybe just DFS. Now, Joe Flacco starts off the streaming quarterback section. He plays against Chicago. He's not highly streamable because he is rostered in 61% of leagues, but he's moved up in my rest of season rankings to my quarterback 15. And if you want to check those out, just go ahead and click the link in my bio. You will be able to see all of my rest of season and weekly rankings there as well. They're throwing it 45 times a game in Cincinnati. This week, he's got a 52.5 point over-under. The rest of season schedule he has is cake. And if he happens to play in the fantasy playoffs and Joe Burrow doesn't take over, he's got a super easy schedule as well. Sam Darnold gets to play the Commanders, and he's been great every single game this season so far outside of the opening game and his game against Houston. And now what we know about Houston is they're an elite defense. Now, the Commanders right now, they're battling a lot of injuries. They are not an elite defense. They're actually giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers versus the Colts. Now, we know the Colts can turn it on at any moment. Jonathan Taylor, Danny Dimes, they are getting it done. 49.5 point over-under here in Week 9. If we think the Steelers are going to have to try and keep up with the Colts, then we're going to see a lot of passing. Justin Herbert just did this a couple weeks ago, where he threw for 420 yards in Week 7 in his efforts to keep up with the high-scoring Colts. Now, if you want more of a long-term play, look no further than J.J. McCarthy. He's available in about 3/4 of leagues. Carson Wentz is out for the season with a shoulder injury, which lined up just perfectly for J.J. McCarthy to return to the lineup. He's got the easiest rest of schedule of any quarterback. Now, we've only seen 2 games of J.J. McCarthy, one where he was horrible and one was a comeback win. He failed to throw for 160 yards in either of those 2 games. Ideally, again, he's mainly a stash, but we know with his weapons that he could be played in a pinch. And then I've got Brock Purdy out here. He's really good in his limited starts, but he's just been unavailable. If he happens to suit up against the Giants, he's certainly streamable here this week. Let's wrap it up with streaming defenses. We've got Detroit versus Minnesota. Detroit does get to play against J.J. McCarthy. He hasn't thrown for over 160 yards in either one of his 2 games. Doesn't mean he can't do that, but he's still a rookie, or basically a player with little NFL experience, so we're hoping that he makes mistakes. Jacksonville versus Las Vegas. Now, the Raiders haven't been moving the ball well this season. The Jags defense has stepped up and made plenty of game-altering plays, and Geno Smith will be baking up some turnovers in Week 9. Los Angeles Rams versus the New Orleans Saints. Now, originally in my docket here, I put we don't know who the quarterback is, so we don't really care, but I got a notification about 3 minutes ago that said it's going to be Tyler Shuck. That doesn't scare me at all. No matter who the quarterback was, we were going to be playing the Rams against the New Orleans Saints, especially with a banged-up Alvin Kamara. San Francisco 49ers versus the New York Jets. Now, the Giants have been playing better. This is a little bit only of a deeper league play, but there's no Scadaboo in the offense, so it should make the offense look a little bit different. And then Seattle versus Washington. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I'm really excited for this one. Now, we most likely won't know until after waivers have ran, but the Seahawks have been a pretty good defense so far on the season, even with their injuries going up and down. They've only allowed one team to score over 20 points this season. And that's it for Week 9's Waiver Wire. If you haven't already, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. I go live each and every single day, and be on the lookout for my weekly ranking videos.